G'day and welcome to the Inforunners. I'm Execute. Today I'm joined by Algared. How you doing, man?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Busy week at school with all the
Oh, it was a
kids?
very busy week at school. We had those horrible parent-teacher Zoom interviews, which was
Yeah, it's a unique experience.
interesting.
At least you can hang up
Interesting.
with them when they're annoying. Just deet. They
No,
go,
no, well,
oh,
we were
I'm
joining their
breaking up.
stream, so it
Right. So
wasn't that bad. It was actually pretty good, but it was longer than normal, so
okay.
tiring.
So we got a request in our episode suggestions to re-look at one of the old episodes that Alg and I did. Oh, I think it must be almost 2 years ago now. Me and you looked at this, Alg, where we were looking at ships whether they were best for solo or fleet, and that was from a slightly different perspective from what we're going to do today. But today we're going to be looking at it. Well, Alg, I'll let you tell people how we're going to look at it.
Well, that's right. So in the suggestion chat, it was basically asked, have we ever looked at ships that are really good just for a solo player, and ships that are, will need multiplayer? And so And then the discussion went, well, we did do a solo or fleet view, but that was really looking at whether ships could work alone or whether they needed to work in company with others. And so we're going to kind of revisit that with more of a focus on, is this a ship I can really survive with on my own? Or is this a ship I really need to have a couple of buds with? And so that's what we're going to do. And we're going to go through the whole plethora of ships. And to do that, we're actually going to break it down by series.
Yeah. So I've made a little graphic here, which is just a massive list. And I've also made a little red circle that I'm going to move around so you know what shit we're talking about. The other thing I do want to point out, there may be some times where we will say there's a bit of a grey area, because obviously some ships... so we're going to talk about every ship basically on a case-by-case basis. I think that's probably the way we'd call it over again. Alright, let's kick it off with 100 series. Can you see, I think this is a really obvious one, but can you see any use for multiple players using the same shit when it comes to a 100 series?
My question for 100 series is, can I see any value in this ship, period? And my answer is no. This is a solo ship, period. And
Yeah.
if you've only got this ship, I'm questioning what on earth you're doing. I can't see a value in this ship really at all. It's really a snub ship.
I think the only thing I could probably use as a case for it would be like an A to B ship when you're traveling to cycle other ships. Like oh, I've got to go over to that planet to get this ship, so I'm going to go over in my 100 just because it's fast.
It's fast, it's durable, it's quick, it's it's one I don't care if I lose. But I can't see much of a value of that ship. So yeah.
300 series, you go first on this one.
300 series, it's a starter level ship. It's a solo player ship. Again, you don't need anyone else with you if you're running this ship. It's one person.
Yeah, I really can't see, even with any of the variants, a reason why you would. But, you know, if you can think of one, please let us know in the comments, you know.
Yeah.
And that goes for any of these. So the 600i, I should have wrote these as 600 series, shouldn't I? Silly me. But yeah, 600 Explorer and Touring. Like for me, obviously, as soon as you go into multiple seats, I can easily see that this can be used for multi-crew. Would you use it in a fleet? Yes, I can actually see a fleet, but it wouldn't be the first choice for that, obviously. There's other ships that can do a similar role in a lot better fashion. Algorithm.
But the key question with this episode Execute is not whether it really works with a fleet, but whether I can function with this ship as a solo player by myself, or whether I need a couple of mates with me in the ship.
Well, you can do. You could get away with a solo in this ship, but obviously you're going to have some AI and stuff. But the point I'm trying to make is, I think it really leans more towards multi-crew than solo play. But yeah, you could get away with solo in this ship. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the 600i is a ship where you can get away with solo. Certainly, even as its current standing, you can get away with it because it's got pilot controlled guns and weapons. You could actually get away running the ship solo. You could also run it with NPC crew or AI crew by yourself. But I think you'll get the most out of a ship if you run it with, one or two mates sitting in those navigation seats or science seats. But definitely a ship you could run by yourself.
85X. I'll let you take this one.
Well, it's a snub ship. It was originally designed as a snub ship. When its original design process, it was said it was made as a competitor with the M50, but it was then put as the companion ship with the 890 jump. It is a solo player ship. It does have a second seat, but it's really a passenger seat.
Yeah,
Solo.
kind of falls back to what we were saying about the 100i, like using it as an A and B. I could probably that'd be the only reason for it. And in some cases, it's worse than say something like a 100i because it's got less. I don't even know if it's got carries cargo.
Well, it doesn't have any
I haven't
cargo.
looked at it for so long myself, but yeah, I'd take like one of the 100 series even over
Well,
this.
it depends what you were doing. If you were trying to, if you and a mate were wanting to go to one of your ships in another system, then using an 85X is probably a better option because it's got that passenger seat,
But
so you could both zip over.
He can sleep all the
But
way there in the 100i. He can't do that. So yeah, that's how lazy you feel, I guess. 890 jump. I gotta let you take this one too.
890 jump doesn't really have any pilot control guns, so it does become a bit more difficult to run solo. But it was one of the first ships that, as a capital ship, that was really designed to be minimal crew, and so you could run it with a couple of AI or NPCs running the turrets. But again, it's a ship that certainly benefits from having extra crew. It's got the hangar, so if you're running a fighter or anything out of it, you really want an extra crewman with you for that.
I
Your points
agree.
on the 890, or do you hate it that much?
I agree. I hate it that much. Right. Apollo. I think this is definitely more than capable to be soloed. I get the feeling this is the type of thing. It's almost like a food delivery truck. You drive it out, you service your needs, and then you drive home. So I think again, if you're talking about those beds and depending on how automatic the beds are, we obviously don't know that play yet. If they're very low and don't need a lot of intensive care, but then again, you might have to actually act like a surgeon sometimes and actually save someone's life. So if it depends, and you might, again, I think that leads very well towards solo play, but also you can upscale it, and they might have two doctors on one ship and a pilot. It gives it that flexibility. And what's to say you can't have an NPC pilot that basically just say you tell him where to drive and then you walk out the back and do what you're doing? So very possible in my book.
So definitely leans towards solo, and I think I think it sits in that grey area only because we don't really know what we're going to need to do with the medical gameplay, and depending on how detailed it is, that could skew it to more needing you and a mate.
Your thoughts on the Argo?
Argo is certainly a ship you can do solo.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken it out solo myself numerous times.
Yeah, well, it
does take a bit more.
Argo Mole, so yeah, you kind of switch seats.
It does take a bit more effort in terms of getting out of a pilot seat to the central mining laser. But so having said that, it's certainly a ship boat solo, but it does benefit from having a mate or two.
Yeah, I think Arrow, like most of the fighters we're going to run into this list, is very evidently solo, but also it can be used in a fleet because obviously it can be used for escorting and stuff like that. And so there's a few of them will probably fall back and just say it's a fighter, and very quickly you'll, So fighters will work in fleets, but they can be used as solo. Algared, Aurora series.
The Aurora series. Well, it's certainly a start. It's a starter ship. It's a solo ship. I could see it working as a small group of mates working together as a fleet, but it's certainly a ship that's designed specifically to run solo.
Yeah, I agree. The Avengers series, the only one I've ever kind of looked at the ship on its own and said you could possibly have two people is if you were having someone bodyguard prisoners, but there's not really that much need for it because they're generally asleep, and once someone goes into a pod, they respawn. So I don't think there really is any reason to have multiple people on an Avenger other than them wanting to be transported. Again, as most fighters and stuff like that, if you want to use them for escorting and that, it can be used in that regard. I think the Defender will fall into the...
Well, with the Avenger, go back to the Avenger, because the only one of the Avenger series I have query with is the Warlock. While it's a solo ship, I don't see it as a ship that you actually want to use by yourself. It's a ship that you really need others with you because it's just that massive EMP, but you've got such crappy weapons and other stuff. You need other ships with you to balance it out. So yeah, you can run it by yourself, but you're doing it with your hand tied behind your back. So, generally, Avengers series solo.
Yeah, Battery Defender falls into a weird place because it's designed for two people, but really, solo or fleet, it falls into that as well because you can have another player with you, or you can not, or you could quite. I float this around on my own quite a bit, and again, it falls into that fighter category. I find the Blade and the Buccaneer do the same, so Algared will
Yeah.
go on to the Pisces.
But with the Defender, the Defender does have that unique situation where, because of its shield, because it's got that phalanx shield, which is supposedly needing, a specialist person to be able to manipulate the shield balance. That's one where having a mate with you is probably going to push it certainly higher, but you could get away with running it solo. Blade, Buccaneer, just like you said, solo.
Yeah, for me, the Pisces falls into the same area as the Aurora, as Algared said. So I'll leave that. So Algared, can you do the Carrack for me?
The Carrack, I have taken it out and run cargo missions with the Carrack solo. I actually think, though, the Carrack really will come into its own if you've got extra crew with you. Yeah, you can have NPC on the turrets. You could maybe even have them as AI blades. But it's such a ship that you actually want to have other people with you just to get the most out of a ship.
It really has all this functionality. Like, it loses a lot of combat to gain versatility. It is one of the most versatile ships in the game. I agree with what you said, Algared. Caterpillar. I think this is yet to see its full strength because we don't have the full final details on the modules. However, it does have that cargo haul ability, and so if you look at it and compare it to, say, something like one of the Hull C or something like that, that I would say is on par. Algared,
and it's one of those ships that does have pilot controlled guns, so you could run it solo, but you're losing your turrets, and that really says either AI turrets, NPC, or a couple of mates, but again, solo with a Caterpillar.
Constellation, Algared.
Constellation series, the turrets are so useless in the Constellation that having mates in the turrets is a waste of time. They'll get bored out of their brain, so NPC will blade them.
We'll see how that goes with 3.10 coming out, because
I don't think they'll actually fix the turrets in the Constellation because they're in such a bad position, and they're pea shooters. So they're only size 2s, and they're in a bad position. So it makes it really, really bad place for a player to be. Having the Mustang, not the Mustang, the P52/72 being able to dock might give you a better value for a mate to be with you. But those size 4s that you've got on the Constellation under pilot control, and also the missiles under pilot control, again, that makes it a solo ship.
Corsair finds for me, falls into a similar position because the guns are in weird positions. But other than that, I think them two ships are in a very similar place. Crucible, Algared.
Crucible, I think, again, a bit hard to say because this ship's not in game at the moment. From what I can understand, this ship is one where you'll get the most out of it if you've got mates.
I agree. The way the turning bridge is made out, and the way the seats are all it looks like it's designed for 3 people at minimum to work up in there. Not even talking about people down, actual repairing the ships and everything. Crusader Ares, I think this falls under a similar branch as the Caterpillar. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, well, I think the Ares is that fighter, that one with the.
I've mixed my. Sorry, I've thought of the.
You're thinking
I'm thinking Hercules. Hercules, sorry, my bad. Yeah, Ares. So yeah, it's a fighter. Sorry. So yeah, it falls under fighter.
So definitely single ship.
Yeah. Cutlass.
I think solo ship. It might come into its own with mates, but you can always put an AI blade or an NPC in the turret.
It's flexible, and I think a lot of the ships in that, from say the 1 to 200 area that are not fighters specifically, I think they kind of do. Another opposite one to that is Eclipse. The Eclipse is 100% solo. It very rarely, like if you think of it like how a Retaliator works, it's strength and stealth. So if you are with another Eclipse, it's probably going to be a couple of them at max, because you're going for a target. You're a target ship. want to take that one with the ship out. The Endeavour, I think this one's fairly obvious. I'll let you take that one over.
I think the Endeavour screams team play.
Likewise. Yeah, just there's so many different multi-player gameplays in there, and it also needs to be protected. It's a floating city, so yeah. Hornet series, I think that falls under fighter. Lightning series falls under fighter. Freelancer series, Algared, your thoughts on that?
Freelancer series, I think, falls into the same category as a Constellation and Corsair.
Yep, and Cutlass.
But even less so, because the only turret that it's got is that useless pea shooter at the back. You don't want to put a mate in that.
Yeah,
Everything else can be pilot controlled.
I struggle to find what I would do on a Freelancer. Like, at least in a Constellation, I've got a table to sit down and stuff. You kind of don't have that in a Freelancer. So, yeah.
Freelancer, you can lie in the bed, you can make a coffee, or you can pilot the ship. There's not much else you can do.
Genesis Starliner. For me, this is again similar to the Hercules series. It's just instead of cargo or the Caterpillar where you're transporting cargo, you're transporting people. I think that's a given. Gladiator, Gladius, Glaive, again all fighters, Algared. So
the Gladiator is, while I would have expected it to have a similar situation to the F7CM, its turret isn't slaved, and so you've actually got to either get an NPC or get a blade in there to make it a solo ship.
Yep.
The Gladiator really does need that turret's firepower just to give it that edge, because it's so undergunned in terms of its firepower. It's got great missiles, but undergunned in terms of lasers.
Yep. Hammerhead, easily multi-crew fleet. It's an escort ship. It's a patrol ship. It's it screams the multi-crew and protecting other people and taking out fighters.
But having said that, I do know people have captured hammerheads and then used the AI guns to do their gameplay. And so having NPC gunners or blades would certainly be a way to go where you could run this ship solo. But this is a ship that, because of the way the turrets are, and from what I've heard, the way in which it works a bit like the mole when you're mining with a mole and you're communicating, the hammerhead seems to work like that with a lot of players, and so I'd go team play.
Yeah. The Hawk again falls into the fighter category. So
solo.
Hercules series, Algared, I think we can agree that kind of falls back under the Caterpillar cargo type of thing. So again, it works a bit more towards team play, but it is technically soloable in safe space.
Yep, certainly soloable. Even with the turrets, again, NPC blade, some of the turrets, and you're probably okay. But again, you'd get the most out of it with mates or others in those turrets.
So I think the Herald's a little bit like the Apollo in this regard, where you can do it as on your own as a service, or you can do it with a mate. So it's got that versatility. Would you say the same?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's probably even more a solo ship than even a mate ship.
So we're halfway through, so I'm going to probably speed this up a little bit. We're taking a little bit of time. So hull A and B, I think we can kind of agree that that's solo.
And you've probably got an idea that we've actually gone through this list and said what we think, and we actually think these are solo ships, but yeah.
Yeah, the C for us kind of goes a little bit either way. And then I'll get you to do the D&E.
Yeah, and the D&E, because they're so big, we actually think they're we're not 100% certain, but we actually think these will be more of a group play type.
Yeah, well, they've got more turrets and stuff on them and stuff like that, so that kind of naturally leads towards requiring more people. But of course, if you want to get away with AI, by all means try it, but I think it'll kind of limit you to safe space more and more. Yep. Hurricane. Now this falls into, it's a little bit like the Super Hornet, where you can go 2 people, but if can you currently slave it, Algared, or
not at the moment? It's a bit like the the Gladiator. So if you can slave that turret, then it's a solo ship. But if you can't, then you're chucking away a massive amount of firepower to fly it solo.
But you might better put an AI in it though. So,
but if you can put an AI and NPC in there who does what you actually want, then yeah.
Yeah. So AI is something that probably needs to. We might have to do an episode on down the road. All right, Idris series, Algared. I think this. If
you think you can take this ship solo, and with only NPC and AI, I think you're an idiot. Um,
Yep.
I think you really, you can probably have AI in the turrets or NPCs, but you're really going to want those mates running the key positions like engineering or.
What did they say in Squadron 42 the last time we heard it? It was up to 85, wasn't it? They're up to 85 NPCs.
No, they put 90 on it to make it seem like it was lived in.
There we go.
The 90 crew in the address.
Yeah, Javelin, I think the last I heard was you need at least 43 humans, and it was like 83 people in total. So that falls into the same boat as the Javelin.
Yeah, the Javelin was designed as your raid ship. So.
Yep. Cartwheel, I'll let you take that one.
Solo.
Yep, 100%. Kraken falls into the same thing as the Javelin and the Idris. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, although less crew actually needed, but
Agreed.
if you think you're going to get away with it running it solo with all those landing pads, you're inviting to be invaded by half a dozen.
The strength of the Kraken is the ships that are able to come to it. That's its thing. So that's probably why it's got less crew. You're not counting the other 5 or so people that are going to come on the ships that come there. M50, very much solo. Mantis, I can see this in a fleet, but it's really fundamentally it's just you in your ship. So if you're not working with others, though, you just don't have the guns to bear. So yeah, this is kind of solo use, but I was just gonna say it's pretty much solo use, but you're gonna have to work with.
For me, the Mantis fits into the same category that the Avenger Warlock was. It's you could run it solo, but it really comes into its own when it's teamed up with others, and that's where its strength is.
Merchman, for me, falls into the same thing as the Caterpillar and the Hercules series. So, yeah, it's just that cargo, and I think it's probably even more so with things like the shop. I think you could... that's a really hard call. Like, you could probably get away, but man, you're going to be locking yourself... Because the Merchman can go to places that there aren't shops, and generally they're not going to be safe. So generally, I think you're going to want to be with other people. You're going to want a bit of cover, or you're going to at least want multiple people to man the turrets and that on a ship. You could probably get away with some AI, but again, in most cases, humans are always going to be better than any form of AI.
Yeah. And that goes back to the Kraken series with the privateer. With the shops, you're going to want people with you to help you. Now, I do want to go back because I've noticed we did have a point from our Patreon supporter who's watching us live. And he actually came back to the Hurricane. And when we were talking about the turret, and while it can't be slaved at the moment, he said that CIG have said it will be able to be slaved. So
there we go.
So there you go.
Mercury Starrunner, Algared.
Mercury Starrunner. It was actually designed kind of, I think, with the kind of Constellation Corsair type mindset, but they've actually made it so it's actually really good for one player. But
I agree.
Will actually go better with people in those.
I think it's flexible. I think it very clearly being undergunned shows that it really can just be soloed. But also it's got the other opportunity, kind of like a really big herald, because you can have someone flying while someone else is using the data banks and stuff like that. So it's kind of like combining, the gameplay of something like a Caterpillar and a herald into one ship. So you've got your data running and you've got your cargo, so giving you a bit of flexibility.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's so popular as well.
I actually think they've actually taken a note from the Millennium Falcon, and they've really picked up the core elements of the Millennium Falcon. The Falcon can be run by one person, but it benefits from having 2, and possibly 3.
Merlin and Archimedes, 100% solo. They can't exist without their mothership, so they basically solo.
Solo ships,
but they're part of a fleet. MVPU series, Algared.
Well, these are in exactly the same position as the Merlin.
So we'll move on. Mustang. I find that's much the same as what you described with the Aurora. Working
exactly the same as the Aurora.
Yeah, working together, but mainly solo. Nautilus, to me, that really is multi-crew. You're going to have a pilot that's kind of driving and organising you know, being very careful while there's other people dropping and picking up mines depending on what they're doing. That to me is the
Yep.
the working together solo.
Now, and I could see you taking a Nautilus and, you know, getting out of your pilot seat and going to the drone control to pick up the mines or whatever system you're using to do it, just like you do with the mole. But it's not going to be as efficient. So you might be able to do it, but you're really going to want a mate or two with you.
Yeah. I think this ship kind of falls into the same thing. Well, the Nautilus, once it's set up, probably will be okay. But initially, I think you need people with it. You know what I mean? Before it gets set up. And I think the Orion kind of falls is the same thing. Like it needs someone to cover it, unless it's in safe space where it's got something automatically covering it.
Well, I think it's probably not quite like the Mole, where even though it's a multi-crew ship, you want, you know, you can do it solo. This is a ship where it's an eight or so crew members, so you're really going to want a couple of people with you.
Otherwise, you're going to be running around from different seats on the ships and constantly.
So you could probably do it, but it's
a lot more running around.
It's not going to be fun.
Yeah,
it's not going to be fun to be able to have to do that.
Pioneer for me, it depends how automated they make this. Because like if you're just the driver, you drive to there, then you sit there, you build a house, 3D print it, and walk off. Do you have to put the materials in? Do you have to take the materials out? Do you have to reposition things? Like they haven't really elaborated on that detail. Because at the moment, it looks like it's a house and it's constructed within a bounding box. So are you actually operating a crane and dragging things out? It really depends on that gameplay that they add. But I would say I would lean just generally on the sides a lot more towards multi-crew and multiple people.
Yeah, and it depends on what they make for those roles as well. If they're just the turret, if the extra people are just turret gunners, then yeah, it's more soloable. But if there's more gameplay there for the others, then
yeah. Polaris, I think this can be either, because the ship itself is a first strike capability, but I think also working in tandem with other large capital ships, it could be quite good in a fleet scenario.
Certainly in a fleet, and whether it's a soloable ship by a single player, I actually think it probably lends itself more to being 2 or 3 players. I think it's got a maximum crew of 8 from memory.
Yes.
And I could be wrong, but I think you could probably get away with 2 or 3 players.
Yeah. Again, if you were filling the turrets with AI, yeah, it depends. Prospector, 100% solo for me. But I can see it in the future working with things like, say, an Orion, and it just, you know, it's mining little things and dropping them off. So it can go. A lot of these ships can go both ways, but like primarily, I would say it's solo.
Yeah.
Prowler, for me, it's kind of that crack team. So for me, it's an infiltration ship. So it's kind of really on its own. It leaves the fleet.
It's on its own.
It leaves the fleet and goes out. Yeah.
Like you're hitting it. It's a solo ship. You can pilot it by yourself, but you actually want those guys in the back, because it's useless without those guys in the back. Yeah.
Razor series, racing
Solo.
and scouting. So for me, it's 100% solo. Reclaimer. For me, this is kind of similar to what we were saying about the Pioneer. I think it, and kind of the Crucible in that way, I think it really does require humans.
Yeah, well, certainly when you look at the gameplay that goes along with it, like that, the Explorer gameplay, where you need to go and explore the ship that you're about to rip apart, I think it really lends itself to that multiplayer experience. So, yeah.
And I forgot to delete the manufacturer from this one, but yeah, the Redeemer, I think, again, it's got that multi-crew element, like it's a ship with turret gunners. It's a mini hammerhead, in short, for me. Algared?
Yeah, and depending on how many guns are pilot-controlled or just totally gunner-controlled, will depend whether it's solo or not. I think you could probably get away with that as a solo ship, though.
Yep. I think the Reliance series is a little bit like the Aurora and Mustang, but having 2 seats, I think it naturally, instantly takes it out of solo, because its strength really is the multi-seat stuff, especially with the turrets and whatnot.
Yeah,
but yes, you can technically get away with solo.
And that was when they were originally selling the ship. That was the ace in the hole for that ship. The fact that it had 2 seats and different positions they could do. So, and it also has that turret, which is can be control, which can spin behind and the remote controlled turret. So,
and then they brought out the Pisces and just totally smashed it out of the water. So
yeah.
Retaliator series, Algared.
Retaliator series, at the moment, certainly a ship where you really want to take it out with crew because the pilot only controls the torpedoes.
Yeah.
If you can get AI turrets on there or NPC, sure.
For me, it technically is very solvable because it's designed to shoot torpedoes. It's all from the gunner, and if this ship is shooting torpedoes, you're gunner using the guns. It's generally because it's last ditch and it's in trouble. And again, those crew members are not going to want to sit around for that last ditch effort. They're going to you're going to have to pay them a lot, where you probably can get away with paying NPC crew members less, to be honest. So. I think it's more solvable than.
And the other thing that I do know, sorry,
yeah, so it's probably more solvable of ships of its size, right?
And one of the things I do know they have said is you could probably slave several of the turrets, but not all of them. So,
so that'll be interesting to see. Saber series just falls under fighter. Santucky Eye. I've heard rumors of this being a 2-seater. What have you heard, Algared?
I've only heard one. You know, I haven't heard 2-seater. If it is a 2-seater, then it's basically what the Cartu Owl was originally billed as being, because it was a 2-seater with the same gun power.
Yeah.
It's currently got the same guns as the Cartu Owl was originally said, but when it was at least pitched, it was still a solo player ship.
Yeah. So it kind of falls under the Super Hornet because it's a fighter. Scythe is the same thing. SRV.
The old Santucky Eye is a medium fighter.
Yeah. So Santucky. So moving on to the SRV. The SRV can have multiple crew members, but I think for me it's very much a solo ship. You can always bend the rules and say yes, 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 but really it's a tow truck. You don't see you can see multiple people go out with a tow truck, but usually it's just one guy. So yeah. Starfarer, Algared, in your opinion?
Starfarer series, I do take mine out and do cargo runs in my Starfarer.
Yep.
But when the refinery aspect comes on with the Starfarer, I think it'll be benefiting from additional crew. So crew actually working on the refinery and balancing things and doing the gameplay there while others are flying or sucking fuel in or doing whatever else needs to be done. So certainly 1 or 2 people.
Taking the Quantanium from gas to a hard form, I think it really shows it more as a fleet or multi-crew, because it now relies on other ships to get that to make the fuel. So yeah, for me, it's very much fleet multi-crew. Terrapin, this goes both ways. It's much like the Herald and the Apollo we talked about before. You can have 1 person or 2, so take your pick. It's going to be stronger, obviously, with more people, but also you can just do stuff on your own. So
certainly a solo ship, yeah.
A lot of these ships that allow you flexibility like that are really valuable, because it means you can use them as a multi-crew. Or you can use them just to do stuff when you're on your own, and that's why I think ships like the Mercury Starliner are really, really popular, because they're big and they can do lots of things like the Constellation can. But then around you can when you're on your own, you can take it and use it like a Herald, or you can use it like a whole A and B, and be kind of a solo cargo runner. The Valkyrie, Algared, in your opinion?
The Valkyries, I think. Well, it's like a bit like the Prowler.
Yes,
agreed. You could take it solo. You really want those gunners with you. You could have AI on them or NPCs, but the real bonus of the Valkyrie is those ground crew guys. So
it's probably got a bit of
getting out doing this.
I was just gonna say it's probably got a little bit of flexibility, like the Mercury, then away, so you can use it for a dropship. But then if you just want to use it to do cargo runs or transport vehicles from one plant to another, you can do that too. But obviously, strength in numbers, as you're suggesting. Vanguard, Algared.
Vanguard. This is what I actually was initially thinking when you said the Valkyrie.
Yeah, sorry.
I was thinking, basically the Vanguard. I think it's really a solo ship. It does have a turret, but for most parts, it's a solo ship. You could get away with it.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes both ways. It kind of falls into that thing like a Super Hornet for me, or a Hurricane. Like, I think most people are going to try and use it solo, but, you know, hey, my buddy's with me today, or then I'll pull them in. But, like, just being a turret gunner is going to get a bit boring for people unless the gameplay is socialization. The Vulcan, I think this is 100% solo. It's like the Prospector. I can't see much use for it, though, with, say, something like a Redeemer. Not a Redeemer, sorry, Reclaimer, because I'd be more inclined to take something like an SRV that can just pull the material over to feed to the Reclaimer. What about you?
Well, the Vulcan's not the salvage one. That's the repair. That's the
I've got them
repair
backwards,
slash.
haven't I? I'm an idiot. Okay,
Yep, you've got them
right.
backwards.
So we're doing the Vulture.
That's okay. I
Right,
did it
we're
with
doing the
Vulture
Vulture.
and
Yeah,
the
that's right. So the
Vanguard.
Vulture. We'll do the Vulture first.
Okay.
It's been a long video. All right, here we go. Leave me alone. Right.
Yeah. I think the Vulture's a solo ship.
Yep.
It's just pull it apart. The downside of the Vulture is just that limited cargo space for what you take.
Yep.
You're better off working with another ship or working with using the Vulture with a Reclaimer,
Yep.
or even a Caterpillar if a Caterpillar does get the chop shop type.
So back to the one that I didn't stuff up, the Vulcan. Yeah, I think this kind of falls into the same thing as like the Herald and the Mercury Starner and stuff like that, where you can go both ways. You can do it on your own, but it's also got enough flexibility that you can have a second person running the other drone. And yeah, what about you, Avery?
Yeah, I actually think the Vulcan's more like the Mole. You could probably do it by yourself.
Yep.
It'll be a bit more fiddly.
Yep. Agreed.
It's certainly a ship though you can do by yourself, but it certainly will come into its own when you've got a mate with you.
Yeah. All right then.
There's our list.
Everything on the list. Like to know in the comments if we've made any mistakes that you think. Is there any that you think lean more towards something than we suggested? It is a grey area. This is not just a black or white thing. There are ships that literally do fall into grey areas. So let us know ships that you think that you disagree with us on, and that's more than welcome. Like the video, subscribe, ring the bell, all that stuff. And yeah, if you want to go the extra mile and support us, consider backing us on Patreon, which has really seen a big boost in the last couple of months. I'm really noticing it, and I've had Algared in charge of that, and he's done a really good job. So anything else you want to say, Algared, before we head off?
No, just as Execute said, ring the bell, be respectful if you don't agree with us, but leave your comments. We do read them all. We may not answer them all, but we do actually read every single comment, and we like hearing that. Join us on Discord. There's a heap of discussion on Discord, which is where this topic came from.
Yep. This was a suggested episode that we revisited, and so we did, and we hope you enjoyed. We'll see you guys in the next one.
And on that note, I'll say God bless, be well, and stay safe.